vegan? And how many people are not yet vegan? All right, I'm here from Vine Sanctuary. Vine stands for Veganism is the Next Evolution. But Vine also stands for Veganism is Not Enough. And so I've been asked to talk to you today about effective animal advocacy. What we can do for animals in addition to going vegan. Although, of course, since we're called Veganism is the Next Evolution, we definitely believe that's a super important thing to do. Vine Sanctuary is an LGBTQ-led farmed animal refuge located in Springfield, Vermont. We work from an eco-feminist understanding of the interconnectedness of oppressions, and so we work for social and environmental justice as well as for animal liberation, and have done for the entire 19 years that we've been in existence. More than 600 animals live at the sanctuary, ranging from a 3,000-pound ox called Scotty to a tiny little parakeet called Sunbeam, with so many people in between. There are cows, goats, sheep, alpacas. Oh, I wish other people were here to remind me. Chickens and pigeons and doves and geese. And I'm always forgetting somebody, but there's also turkeys and parrots, emus, and many others. Now, if you were at the sanctuary first thing in the morning, like Anna, who's at our table right now, she was there at 6 a.m. to do opening chores, as we do every day at sunrise. And if you were there with her, you would have heard a cacophony of crowing and quacking and mooing and baaing, and Valkyrie the pig makes, I can't even describe the sounds that she makes if you're a little bit late in getting her breakfast. And so you would learn just by being there the first thing that I hope to teach you about effective animal advocacy, which is that animals are not voiceless. Animals have their own voices. The problem isn't that animals are weak, passive, helpless beings who need heroic humans to save them. No. Animals fight back against what humans do to them every single day. So we need, if we want to be advocates for animals, to not see ourselves as heroes who are going to rush to their rescue, but instead as their allies. As allies of beings who are every single day actively engaged in their own liberation. Does that make sense? If anybody thinks that makes sense, nod, because it's very weird to be talking to people so far away. I see a nod. All right. Now, if you were at the sanctuary in the morning, another thing that you would notice is that between the cows and the geese and the ducks and the chickens, roosters and hens both, they're very different from each other. And different from us, too. In really meaningful ways. And there are a few lessons that we who are animal advocates can draw from that. One is that different animals want different things. Different animals need different things from us. Different animals have different relationships to human oppression and different things that they have the right to expect us to do. So we need to be mindful of that. And not fall into the trap of saying, well, here's the one thing that we all must do, because not all animals need exactly the same thing, if that makes sense. Free-living animals, for example, are a lot more interested in questions of pollution and despoliation than they are about the question of legal rights, if that makes sense. But another thing that you would that's important when we think about how different animals are from each other and from us is that a lot of times, and I'm not saying it's wrong, A lot of times what we do as animal advocates in order to try and get people to have more empathy for animals is to draw attention to the ways that they're like us. Yes? That's a really common thing to do. And I think that's a fine thing to do, strategically, when it's warranted. But we have to be really careful, because if we do it that way, we're sort of suggesting that only the ones who are like us are worthy of moral regard. Only the ones who are like us are worthy of care. Only the ones who are like us have value. And I think that's implicitly a little bit of a dangerous way of thinking. And so, wouldn't it maybe be better, instead of sort of going along with that idea that different equals less, that when there's difference, there's got to be a better and a lesser? What if we included in our animal advocacy efforts to promote difference as value, diversity as strength, biodiversity and all other kinds of diversity as valuable? Does that make sense? So I'm hoping that's something like me you would think if you were at the sanctuary. Now, the other thing that you might notice when you're at the sanctuary is, and you'd only notice this if you're not so caught up in looking at the animals that you, and it's hard because it's so amazing, but you might notice that they're looking back at you. You might notice a group of about 5 ducks talking to each other, looking at you, talking to each other some more, clearly talking about you, possibly talking smack about you, but clearly having a conversation about you. And so then what you would become aware of is something that I'm aware of all the time, which is that animals are watching us and wondering what we're going to do, right? They're wondering what we're going to do because they know how dangerous humans have been to them. But many animals also seem to recognize that there are significant differences among humans, and that at least some humans are capable of acting decently. And so it's an open question for them that I often see in their eyes. Who are you? What are you going to be like? What are you going to do for, with, about the things that hurt me? Does that make sense? All right, so that's why I'm here today, to talk to you and share some of the things that I have learned in a shockingly large number of years of trying to create social change in different ways, so that you can most effectively answer that question. What are you going to do with action that actually makes a difference for animals? So if you're wondering who am I to talk to you about those things, I'll tell you a little bit about myself before I tell you a few more lessons from the sanctuary. In 1976, 1976 was the year that I quit eating meat and went to my first gay rights rally. That's the year, also the year I turned 15. So, some people might see that as just an accident. Teenagers tend to do those kinds of things, a coincidence. Some people might even see those two things, quitting meat and coming out, though we can't quite call it that because I wasn't ever in. Some people would see those two things as almost opposite of each other, right? Because by coming out, I was like reaching for something that I wanted. And many people see going vegetarian or vegan as forswearing desire, turning your back on something that you want in order to be righteous. Yes? But looking back, I think that those two decisions were exactly the same thing. I think that in both of those instances, what the teenage 1970s bell-bottom wearing me was doing was reaching for what my heart really wanted, despite what the dominant culture told me I should want. The dominant culture told me that I should want a boyfriend, but I knew I didn't want a boyfriend. The dominant culture also told me and had spent my lifetime advertising to me that I should like cheeseburgers, that I should want cheeseburgers. But when I really thought about it, I did not want to kill a cow. And so in both instances, it was reaching for what I really wanted, despite what the dominant culture had tried to tell me. Now, this is important. Because I think most people don't want to kill a cow. I think most people want to have good relationships with other animals. Huh? I think that's behind a lot of the people who will tell you, sometimes vegans want to tear their hair out because they hear people saying how much they love animals, but they're still eating animals, right? But the reason that they're saying how much they love animals, or the reason that they're coming up with all these different excuses why they have to keep eating animals, is because they actually don't want to be a person who causes pain. They don't want to be a person who causes harm to innocent animals. And I think, we'll come back to this at the end, but I think that impulse, that person, that wish to have good, sustainable, kind relation with other animals, I think that lives in most people, and I think that's what we call to. I think that's the task before us, one of the most important tasks before us, to call to that. But the other thing I'm going to tell you is don't believe me or anybody else when we tell you this is the one thing that you should do, or the one approach that you should take. So 1976 got me started in activism. And I did lots of different things and lots of different movements, and I ended up by the late 1980s and early 1990s when I was doing a lot of AIDS activism. This was at the height of the AIDS crisis. I ended up having the opportunity to teach a course on the theory and practice of social change activism at the University of Michigan. And then several times in the next 20 or so years, I had the opportunity at different colleges or universities to teach courses on social change. And so what that means is that in addition to sort of a lifetime at this point of my own activism, I worked as a tenant organizer, I worked at a Center for Anti-Racist Education, I worked with feminist organizations, but there were also times in my life where it was literally my job to learn how social change works, to study how social change happens, and then to teach about that. And so what I'm going to be weaving together for you are some of the things that I learned there, as well as some of the things that I learned at the sanctuary. And the most important thing that I learned looking at successful social change movements around the world. And by successful, I mean having created some substantial change, even though, of course, it's never perfect. Substantial change tends to happen when there are a variety of people and organizations approaching the same problem from a variety of angles. Ideally, coordinating rather than competing with one another, right? Ideally, understanding that if I sketch out this position that seems really radical, that's actually going to help rather than hurt the person who's sketching out a more moderate position, because their position is now going to seem a lot more reasonable to the average person by virtue of the radical position that I've just staked out. Does that make sense? We understand that we need people working within the system to create whatever change is possible right now to stop the suffering. while never losing track of the long-term goal. With animal liberation, that means our eye is on that prize of liberation for everybody. At the same time, we understand there's so much suffering going on right now. And so without losing track of that long-term goal and not doing anything against that long-term goal, we need at least some people just trying to stop the suffering right now, huh? We need people to work legislatively. We need people to work creatively and artistically. We need people to create culture change in all sorts of ways. We need people on the streets fighting back against various atrocities. We need people willing to break the law and go into that factory farm and bring out whoever you can, videotape the whole thing, show the videotapes to the world, bring the survivors to sanctuaries. We need people to do all of those things and more, right? And so, if there was one most important thing I could tell you today, it would be to please find your own niche, find the things that you're in the best position to do, and I'm going to talk about that more in one moment, while at the same time recognizing the value of the things that other people are doing in the movement and doing your best to be in solidarity with them. That doesn't mean you can't have critical conversations about whether this or that strategy is or isn't working, but trying not to denigrate other activists or set up competitions between organizations, to foster to be part of a spirit of collaborative problem solving. Yeah? I'm seeing some nods, so we're cool. Vine volunteer right there. All right, so I said find your own niche. And I can't see the clock tower from here, so I'm periodically ducking over there to look and check my time. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is that sometimes people think, well, let me back up and say, so when people become aware of the scope and extent of the suffering of non-human animals, they often feel a little bit overwhelmed. They often feel helpless. It's so huge. What could I do? What could one person do? And maybe also they have these, because we live in celebrity culture and star culture, maybe they just have this idea that unless you're like the person you're going to hear next, unless you're like Paul Watson, you can't do anything that's substantial. And so that can lead to a feeling of helplessness. So it's really important to understand the things that you can do, and to choose things that you're well suited for. I lost track for a minute, sorry. So, there's so many things to work on. The first thing to ask yourself if you're trying to decide what you can do is what moves you most to do, right? What's the thing that's keeping you up at night because it drives you so, like you just are so anguished about it? Well, then maybe that's going to be your focus. Or ask yourself, what needs doing that's not being done right now? Which organization needs things that they don't have right now? The next thing to ask yourself is to do a little inventory. Not just what are my interests, but what are my talents, what are my skills, what are the resources that I have? Am I physically strong and can do manual work in weather like this without getting exhausted? Am I really gregarious and really good at like talking to people? So then maybe I could be a leafleter of some sort or do tabling. But maybe am I instead somebody who likes to think for a long time about things and I actually have pretty good research skills, so maybe I'm going to do research. Do I have artistic skills? Make sense? I'm not going to be able to list all the different things that people can do. But it's really important to remember that, so for example, when you see the sea shepherd on TV. There's so many people doing so many different things, not just the people that you see, right? There's not just the crew and the captain, but there's all the researchers, there's all the fundraisers, there's the people who did the graphic design for the fabulous t-shirts. There's like 12, it's not 12 million people, but there's a lot of people who are doing a lot of things. Same thing at Vine. Maybe you just see me here talking, but I hope you're not giving me all the credit because I'm just one of the co-founders. There's another human co-founder and a chicken co-founder who I'm going to tell you about in a minute. And there's a whole staff of people and volunteers who are doing hard manual labor every day, who are also doing research, writing, creative labor, etc. Yes? And so the key is to find your niche. And when I said find your niche, maybe some of you at least, no. So finding your niche is finding the things that you're in the best position to do. And another part of that inventory has to be, where am I physically? What's happening where I am right now? It's great to be involved in national and international struggles. Vine as an organization, we've been around, we're going to celebrate our 20th anniversary next year. So we have our sanctuary here, our main sanctuary here in Vermont. We have a smaller sanctuary in Maryland. We do national and international work as well as local work. But we always do the local work too. And I think that you will find you will be best able to make an impact if you involve yourself in local organizations. And so I want to talk to you. I want to just give a few shout outs to a few local organizations. Some of them are here right here, and you can visit their tables today. Others you're going to need to look up online. But there are going to be things that you're in a position to do because you are right there. And that's what these organizations are doing, and I really hope that you'll involve yourself with them if you haven't already. So I see sitting in the audience people who are affiliated with Twin States Animal Liberation, so let's just start there. That's a relatively new organization that includes both Vermont and New Hampshire, obviously, the Twin States, and has been involved in a variety of actions. A lot of work promoting plant-based diets, which is right down with our Veg Fest theme today. And I just want to give a shout out to the extraordinary work they've done for the past couple years in disrupting the strolling of the heifers in Brattleboro, which is a horrific annual parade that promotes the dairy industry. So shout out to them for that. Another fabulous local organization that's here is the New Hampshire Animal Rights League. And they have been around for, I should have gone online so that I could have told you the year, but it's a really long time. And they involve themselves both in local work and in national work. So if you visit their table today, you see they're involving themselves in issues concerning whale captivity, but they're also out there protesting abuses of animals locally in entertainment. They deal with legislative issues or state issues such as the constitution of the Fish and Wildlife Commission. So they're definitely worth your support. Another organization that I